If you could only eat one last meal before you died, what would it be? Death row inmate Sekarmadji Maridjan Kartosuwiryo chose Rendang and Rice. This is Death Row Diner. So, pardon my almost certainly wrong pronunciation, but rendang is an Indonesian beef stew curry combo. It starts like a curry, but you cook it for so long that all the sauce gets absorbed into the meat and it ends up having more of a stew-like consistency. I've heard it referred to as a dry curry. So where I live, a lot of the ingredients for this are not super easy to come by, so I did kind of an amalgamation of a couple different recipes based on what I could find. One from rasamalaysia.com and the other from Chef John from foodwishes.com. We're going to start by prepping a bunch of ingredients, starting with lemongrass. Cut the whiter part of the lemongrass into pieces that are a few inches long and add them to a bowl of a food processor. Then bang the rest of the lemongrass with your knife. Apparently this helps the flavor come out or something, and then cut it into pieces that are also a few inches long. And we're just going to set those aside for now. Now, I know I said I'm never going to use an onion on this channel, but these are technically shallots. And usually I'd omit them anyway, but this thing cooks for like 4 hours, so I think it's going to need all the water content from vegetables it can get. Besides, it can't possibly still taste like onions after 4 hours, right? I think this may very well be the first time I've ever cut an onion-like vegetable before. You just like peel the skin off like this. Oh god, it's starting to smell like onions. I can smell it. They said shallots would be different. They lied. Alright, chuck those in the food processor as well. Good riddance. I could feel it on my hands. Okay, time for something a little more digestible. Just a few nice little peppers here. So Chef John's recipe called for Fresno and Serrano chili peppers. The peppers at my store weren't super clearly labeled. I grabbed a few what I thought were labeled Serranos, but as I checked out, the lady at the cash register said, "These are ghost peppers, right?" And I was like, Serrano peppers, ghost peppers? I mean, they're probably interchangeable, right? What could the difference possibly be? What, like a million just about a million Scoville units. Okay, I'm just going to use one of these, and I'm going to make sure I cut out all the seeds and the pith for good measure. Should I be wearing gloves for this? I don't know what I thought a Serrano was supposed to look like, but this is a pretty mean looking pepper. I should have known better. Well, chuck it in the food processor. So because we went from a whole bunch of medium spicy peppers to one tiny insanely hot pepper, I'm going to try and even it out a little by adding a bell pepper to this as well. That's how Scoville units work, right? If I add something that has 0 to something that has a million, that brings it down to like, what, 500k? We're also adding a couple cloves of garlic, about an inch or so of peeled ginger, and what was supposed to be something called galangal, which I could not find. So I figured I'd use a bit of turmeric instead. Galangal is supposed to be kind of like ginger, but not quite like ginger, and turmeric is also kind of like that, so we're just winging all sorts of things today. With all that added to the food processor, we'll add a pinch of salt, always a pinch of salt, and give it a few pulses. Use a spatula to push down the sides a bit so everything gets all incorporated. At this point, you're going to wish you were wearing goggles, and pulse it a few more times. Before we get cooking on that stuff, add about 5 TBSPs of shredded coconut to a pan. Toss it around over medium-low heat until it gets nice and toasty. To another pan, add a generous drizzle of oil and bring it up to medium heat. You're going to be cooking the stew in this, so it's going to be going for a long time. I opted for a non-stick. I felt like a stainless steel pan, it would probably have a lot of stickage. Once that's heated up a bit, we're going to add our spice paste. We're going to let this cook for a few minutes. Are anyone else's eyes burning right now? I never thought that the shallot would be the least painful part of all this. After a few minutes, add a stick of cinnamon, a couple star anise, a couple cloves, and a couple cardamom pods. I can't believe I was able to find all that stuff. Continue cooking for a few more minutes, stirring occasionally. Then you're going to add in your beef. We're just using stew beef here. You need something that has a lot of fat and connective tissue in it, something that you can cook for a long time without it drying out. We're also going to drop in those lemongrass stalks we saved earlier. Give that a good stir until everything's mixed together. While the beef continues to brown for a few minutes, we're going to prep our next thing, which is tamarind paste. Going to take a couple TSPs of this stuff and mix it with a bit of water. Stir it together to try and get it to mix in real good. I think this is what it's supposed to look like. Once the beef is mostly cooked, at least on the outside, going to add a cup of coconut milk, a cup of water, that tamarind paste mixed with water we made earlier, and stir it all together. After cooking for a few more minutes, we're going to add in our toasted coconut from earlier, as well as a TBSP of sugar, and I couldn't find kefir or lime leaves, so I just got a bit of lime zest here I'm going to add to it. Stir it all together, and now we just let it cook for a really long time. One recipe said an hour to 2 hours, one recipe said 4 hours. I don't really know who to trust, so I'm just going to let it go until it looks like the pictures. After all, you are the Chef John of your Rendang, as the kids say. We're going to keep checking on this periodically over the next few hours as it cooks. Make sure to keep stirring it and try to make sure it doesn't get stuck or burned to the bottom. When it's about 45 minutes to an hour away from being done, we're going to try out our fancy new rice cooker. Did you guys know that these notches at the back here tell you how much water to add based on how many cups of rice you put in there? I guess that's why these things come with instructions. And good thing it did. This one has like 6 more buttons than my last rice cooker. At this point, most of the sauce is dried up and it's starting to look more like the final product. And soon after, virtually all the sauce is gone and it's resembling what I would say is a dry curry. Although it's around now, I realize that I've completely lost the cloves and star anise and cardamom pods that I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to just bite into. I'm gonna see if I can fish them out of here. Cardamom pods are pretty easy to find, and I think that's the star anise. Those cloves are long gone though, there's no way I'm finding those. But now this is pretty much ready, we'll just check our rice, and it's time to plate up. And there we have it. As expected, this was one of the spiciest things I've ever eaten, even with that one tiny little pepper with all the seeds cut out. But aside from that, it had some pretty good flavor. It had a very tropical vibe to it with the coconut and lime zest and I assume the tamarind added to that. Tropical doesn't really go with beef though, IMHO. I feel like these flavors would go better with chicken or shrimp or fish or something like that. The earthy flavor of the beef with the tropical flavors of all the toppings, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't really jive with me. So while based on what I ate, I'd have to give it a pretty low score, it's not really fair considering how many times I screwed up the recipe. I'm sure if I did it right with all the right ingredients, and this was something I actually ate growing up, I'd like it a lot more. So I'm going to bump the score up a bit to compensate for that. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.